Twitter savior Elon Musk was interviewed, or should I say, attempted to be interviewed by the BBC's North America tech reporter James Clayton. Emphasis on BBC's tech reporter, leading one to believe he, James, would have a general knowledge of tech, or at least Twitter, and the goings-on within. The interview occurred against the backdrop of Twitter tagging one of the BBC's accounts as, quote, government-funded media. The full story on the new government-funded media tagging you can find on the channel, posted a couple of days ago. Musk patiently spoke on a range of topics despite the rude constant interruptions and the non-stop speaking over of Elon that James the tech reporter was almost uncontrollably doing. This included a lengthy discussion of his acrimonious purchase of Twitter for $44 billion, which involved an intense back and forth between him and the former Twitter bosses. Talking about running Twitter, Musk joked, quote, "It's not been boring. It's been quite a roller coaster," unquote. He added it was really quite a stressful situation over the last several months, but he insisted that buying the company was the right thing to do. Musk said Twitter wasn't doing well financially when he took over and was being run almost like a non-profit organization. Go figure. Twitter is now close to breaking even because of drastic cost cuts and various subscription services such as the blue tick or check mark. Musk said that usage of the site is up and the site works. He added that the workload, since Musk also runs car maker Tesla and rocket firm SpaceX, means that, quote, "I sometimes sleep in the office," he said, adding that he has a spot on a couch in a library that nobody goes to. Regarding his controversial tweets, he joked, quote, "Have I shot myself in the foot with tweets multiple times? Yes." He then joked, "I think I should not tweet after 3 a.m. Musk spoke about his efforts to curb disinformation by removing bots. Musk also spoke about his commitment to free speech and the fact that he is against banning TikTok. When asked about the decision to add a label to the BBC's main Twitter account, describing it as government-funded media, the interview got, well, let's say, interesting. Musk said Twitter was adjusting the label for the BBC to, quote, publicly funded. The BBC receives most of its funding through license fees paid by UK households. In 2022, the BBC received $4.7 billion of its total annual funding of $6.3 billion from license fees. The rest of the funding emanated from its commercial and other activities like grants, royalties, and rental income. The BBC also received roughly $112 million per year from the UK government to support BBC World, which serves non-UK audiences. Clayton then proceeded to ask Musk about Twitter ending their bat stew misinformation policy that was used to label or censor Twitter about alternative cures for the bat stew and the effectiveness or the side effects of the jab. Musk responded asking, has BBC changed its bat stew misinformation? Quote, "Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of the poke, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change editorial policy? Are you aware of that?" Musk asked. Clayton, of course, squirmed his way out of that one by saying the interview was not about the BBC and he does not set the editorial policies. Now for the most controversial section of the exchange. Musk's detractors have frequently claimed that since his purchase, Twitter has become a platform of disinformation, bigotry, and hate. Because of course they have. You see, for the most part, these are intellectually lazy and all-around angry, hateful people. You see, the BBC analyzed more than 1,000 previously banned accounts that had been reinstated following Musk's takeover, and found that since being reinstated, over a third of them had spread abuse or misinformation. So what is this abuse and misinformation? Well, the BBC seems to think that false anti-vax claims, misogyny, and anti-LGBT rhetoric, and of course the denial of the 2020 US election results, abuse or misinformation. Doubtlessly, there must be several other studies that arrive at identical inferences, right? I'm not seeing any. Anyways, numerous showbiz celebrities quit Twitter owing to this change. A few examples would be Elton John and his famous tweet, quote, "All my life I've tried to use music to bring people together, yet it saddens me to see how misinformation is now being used to divide our world." He continued, "I've decided to no longer use Twitter given their recent change in policy, which will allow misinformation to flourish unchecked." Now, this tweet famously led to a response from Elon Musk where he just simply asked for receipts, in which Elton John had none, similar to the reporter from the BBC we're talking about now. Moving on, Whoopi Goldberg finally had enough, putting her foot down, her big, nasty foot, tweeting out, quote, "I'm going to get out, and if it settles down and I feel more comfortable, maybe I'll come back." Well, Whoopi, don't worry about it. We're fine. Toni Braxton, of all people, thought she was important enough to tweet out, "I'm shocked and appalled at some of the free speech I've seen on this platform since its acquisition. Hate speech under the veil of free speech is unacceptable. Therefore, I am choosing to stay off Twitter, as it is no longer a safe space for myself, my sons, and other POCs." Isn't that rich? Tony, if I may, you have not been a POC since the early 80s. In fact, you have not been considered a normal citizen since the early 80s, so please, spare us all. Okay, moving on, and this will be the last example. Even Captain Sully Sullenberger, the brave pilot who saved 155 lives by landing U.S. Airways Flight 1549 on the Hudson River with 2 disabled engines, couldn't take the turbulence of Twitter. Come on, stop. He tweeted out, "To my friends on Twitter, I will be taking a step back from the platform for now." I love the "for now" part, or "I might be back." These people are addicted. It's hilarious. He finished off by saying, "Connect with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram to stay informed and hear my latest personal and professional updates." Yeah, sure, buddy. We're all over that. Okay, so Clayton, the BBC interviewer, claimed he noticed a slight rise in hateful tweets since Musk took over. So naturally and rightly, Musk countered Clayton by asking him to cite specific examples to substantiate his claim. Quote, honestly, I don't actually use that for you feed anymore because I don't particularly like it, and a lot of people are quite similar," said Clayton, struggling after being caught fabricating, basically. Quote, "You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example. Not even one," Musk pressed. Quote, "I'm asking for one example. I say, sir, you don't know what you're talking about because you can't name a specific example of hateful content, not even one tweet. Yet you claimed that the hateful content was high. That's false. You just lied," unquote. Clayton, of course, then attempted to amend his initial claim, saying that he meant organizations who track that type of content say hateful tweets are on the rise. Musk again pressed Clayton for examples, but Clayton could provide none. Here's the clip.
We've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that something that you want to address?
What hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
but just a personal anecdote, like what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content, yeah, personally.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I don't.
You can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why, because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore, because I just don't particularly like it. I only look at my following.
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and
how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen that you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet, and yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's false. People will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know there's hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time. COVID misinformation.
So, what do we make of all this? Obviously, the BBC interviewer came across like a befuddled, confused little leftist minion, unprepared to take any pushback because he came from a leftist bubble where pushback or narrative questioning of any kind has been outlawed long ago. When challenged by Musk, he responded with this false sense of righteousness. It's disgusting, and that's always a dead giveaway of a bubble dweller. He had zero facts on his side, but was completely comfortable in his beliefs. You know, we see this everywhere now. Young racial activists so enraged and passionate over a bunch of lies and nonsense, spoon-fed to them from every angle. Same with the climate cultists and the tea people. Also passionate and at the same time completely and utterly full of shit in every way possible. Obviously, there is no proof to suggest that hate and disinformation is on the rise since Musk took over Twitter. Twitter is a public platform, and there will always be a significant amount of misinformation and bigotry, though one would be surprised to see from which side of the political aisle most of this crap is generated. What's amazing is that a journalist from a supposed reputable organization such as the BBC would be so ill-prepared for this interview. An interview with someone so popular, good or bad, with everyone all around the world. Oh, and did I forget to mention he's the richest man in the world? Way to send your best, BBC. Now that's tax dollars well spent, right? The 60 Minutes Marjorie Taylor Greene interview was similar in lack of preparedness. Lesley Stahl pretty much stopped in her tracks on several really juicy topics because she knew that Marjorie Taylor Greene was ready for the battle and would rather hear that she was soft on Greene than get her ass handed to her on national television on Sunday night. It was just that simple, and oh, so obvious throughout the interview. This type of hive mind mentality, this bubble living, as I mentioned earlier, is what's leading to governors' races across the country where they don't even participate in an actual debate. And not just governors' races, we're seeing this with AOC, Ilhan Omar. A lot of the more extremist Democrats just so happen to not really like to participate in debates these days. And lastly, the end result of the lack of exposure to other ideas creates the insanity we're dealing with today, especially with the younger generations. They don't know anything else because the tolerance level on the left is zero. And who's the least tolerant faction on the left? Well, I think that directly ties to all the pew-pews going on in schools and, I guess, banks these days. Anyways, talk about a rabbit hole. My bad. Most of this came by way of the American Thinker. If you liked it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.